All right, today we're diving into one of the most incredible and honestly one of the toughest travelogues ever written, Charles Doughty's Travels in Arabia Deserta. Now, this isn't just a book about a place. It's a total immersion into a world of extreme hardship, zealous faith, and a kind of strange, profound beauty. And it's all captured in a language that is just as monumental and unforgiving as the landscape itself. To really get the world Doughty walked into, you have to start right here with this quote. This was the answer he got when he asked a pilgrim how on earth he expected to survive a brutal 700-mile trek to Mecca. Think about that for a second. There's no talk of preparation or willpower or endurance. It's just this stark, fatalistic acceptance of the desert's power. Those that die, die. If you live, it's because God willed it. That's it. This is the mindset you need just to face the Arabia Deserta. So let's begin with the land itself, because for Doughty, the desert was never, ever just a location on a map. The way Doughty tells it, this wasn't some romantic adventure. This was a fight, a daily, hourly battle for survival against an active and frankly often malevolent force. Every single sunrise brought a new challenge. Every drop of water was a hard-won victory against an opponent that simply never gets tired. And this just lays out the sheer, relentless toil it took just to exist. I mean, forget about thriving. Can you imagine driving wells from midnight all the way to dawn? Just this grueling, back-breaking work to pull water from the ground. Or picture the women, at every turn of the well walk, literally hand-feeding the camels. Doughty describes a people with drawn brows, who taste little rest, always on the very edge of famine and fever, living off brackish water in a sun-stricken lowland. This wasn't a phase. This was their entire life, from the moment they were born. So, how did they do it? How did they possibly bear it? When Doughty would ask these poor souls at the wells how they could stand such a life, the answer was always the same. Min Allah, from God. The Lord enabled him. It's that same deep resignation we saw in the Pilgrim, right? Survival wasn't a product of their own strength. It was a gift, or maybe a decree from God.
And this brutal environment, well, it sets the stage for the human drama of the story. If the desert was the main physical enemy, Doughty's own identity created this constant, life-threatening social conflict. He made the absolutely astonishing choice to travel openly as a Nasrani, a Christian, in one of the most religiously zealous places on the planet.
This was the question he got all the time. It was this mix of suspicion and this deep, almost childlike curiosity that could flip to hostile in a heartbeat. His faith wasn't a private thing. It was a public spectacle, a puzzle, and a potential crime. The people he met had only ever heard of Christians through their own scriptures, so their questions were blunt. Do you worship idols? Are you a polytheist? And this was the stark reality, just as a friendly local laid it out for him. In this wild, fanatical country, the very name Nasrani was an execration, a curse. To many, a Christian wasn't just someone who was wrong. They were a literal son of the evil one, and because of that, their life was worthless. His identity was basically a death sentence waiting to be carried out. And this, right here, brings us to the central mystery of the entire book. Why? Why would he endure this? Why not just pretend to be a Muslim? People told him to do it over and over just to save his own skin. Was it some kind of English pride? A deep religious conviction? Or was it just a stubborn, almost suicidal kind of honesty? This question hangs over every single page, shaping every interaction he has. And his refusal, well, it had real daily consequences. His scientific instruments, they were seen as some kind of jinn devised against the Muslimin, a magic trick or a weapon. He heard these bone-chilling stories of two strangers who were executed during a pilgrimage simply because they were discovered writing in notebooks and were assumed to be Christians. He was warned again and again, one wrong word about the prophet and your throat will be cut. The danger was constant, and it was deeply personal. But here's the thing. Amidst all this peril, Doughty was also a guest. He was living among the Bedouin tribes, and he documented their incredibly complex society, a world of deep traditions, contradictions, and a fierce sense of honor. Okay, so central to this way of life was something called the grazu, the raid. Now, this wasn't just simple robbery, you know. It was part of their economy, it was a matter of honor, and it was a constant feature of how the tribes dealt with each other. One day you could be sharing coffee with another tribe, the next you could be their enemies to the death, riding out to steal their camels. This constant, low-level state of warfare defined everything. And here you see this incredible contradiction at the heart of Bedouin law. On the one hand, hospitality was absolutely sacred. A guest was seen as a guest of God. Sharing food was the sacrament of the bread and salt. Your host would literally tear off the best piece of meat for you. But on the other hand, their justice was harsh and totally insular. A powerful emir would just refuse to get involved in tribal fights, saying, "This lies between you." Even the law itself was fluid. Doughty notes it wasn't even considered binding until 3 days had passed. He had to navigate this world where he could be treated like a king one minute and be left completely defenseless the next. Even something as basic as eating was governed by these strict unspoken rules that really showed you how scarce everything was. A communal meal wasn't a social get-together. Doughty called it a short battle of the teeth for a day's life. You ate as fast as you possibly could, in total silence. To linger over the food was seen as dishonest, because you were keeping others who were just as hungry from their turn. It was this ritual of pure, efficient survival, and it was completely alien to him. All right, so that brings us to the final piece of this puzzle. And honestly, it might be the most challenging one, the book itself. To read Arabia Deserta is to come face to face with a style that is just as unique and demanding as the journey he took. Doughty's voice is deliberately archaic, poetic, and absolutely epic. See, Doughty made a very specific choice. He wrote in this kind of old-school, almost Elizabethan English, full of weird sentence structures and forgotten words. So why do that? Well, he felt that the simple, modern language of his time just couldn't capture the ancient, epic quality of the world he was in. The prose actually forces you to slow down, to struggle, to work for the meaning, just like he had to work for every single day of his survival. The style is the experience. And man, just listen to the power in this. He's not just describing a ruler, he's dissecting the psychology of a tyrant. He cuts right through the high looks and the princecraft to show you the secret miseries and the horror that has to haunt a man living in bloody solitude. That isn't journalism. That's like a profound moral diagnosis delivered with the weight of an Old Testament prophet. But his language could also be incredibly intimate and poetic. Here he is, describing his own failing health, and he uses this beautiful, fragile image that a friend gave him. His life is a nickering lampwick, just a tiny flame fluttering, about to go out. In that one single phrase, you feel his physical weakness, his dependence on others, and just how close he was to death all the time. So, in the end, Doughty's style is a barrier, for sure. It's like a fortress made of words. It demands a lot of effort from you as a reader. But once you're inside, you are completely and totally immersed in his world. You don't just read about the desert. You feel its scale, its harshness, and its unforgiving logic through the very structure of his sentences. And we have to end with this. A final, haunting warning given to Doughty by an Arab friend who was begging him to leave. It just perfectly sums up the entire journey, doesn't it? This was a land so dangerous that even its own native sons felt the peril. Doughty had seen enough, and thanks to his monumental book, he made sure that we too could see that lawless, perilous, and completely unforgettable world.